In 1965, the Kinks were at the peak of their success with hits like You Really Got Me, topping charts worldwide. Within months, they were completely banned from America. What happened during those critical months that cost them an estimated $50 million? And how did this devastating ban transform them from potential one-hit wonders into rock legends? A single violent incident in Cardiff triggered a chain of events that locked the Kinks out of America for 4 critical years. While the Beatles and Rolling Stones were conquering the United States and making millions, the Kinks were suddenly banned from the world's biggest music market. This devastating blow cost them an estimated fortune in lost revenue and nearly ended their career before it had truly begun. What if a single fight changed the course of rock history? For the Kinks, that's exactly what happened. Behind their catchy hits lay a powder keg of tension between Dave Davies and Mick Avory. "I hated him," Dave later admitted about Avory. "I think he hated me too." Their mutual hatred intensified with each success. Everything exploded on May 19, 1965 at Cardiff's Capitol Theatre. During their performance, Dave deliberately kicked over Mick's drum kit in a rage. Mick snapped, grabbed a cymbal stand, and swung it directly at Dave's head, knocking him unconscious in front of hundreds of shocked fans. Blood streamed down Dave's face as stagehands rushed him to the hospital for 16 stitches. Headlines screamed, "Kinks drummer attacks guitarist on stage," cementing their reputation as dangerous troublemakers. This violent image followed them to America, where their behavior worsened. In Sacramento, they turned You Really Got Me into a bizarre 45-minute jam that left audiences bewildered. In San Francisco, they simply didn't show up for their scheduled performance. The final blow came on July 2, 1965, on Dick Clark's Where the Action Is set. Ray Davies, usually the calm professional, lost his cool when confronted by a union official backstage. Some American TV union official kept saying, "The British are coming," over and over again. Ray later explained, "Then he started making anti-British comments. I told him to stop it, he pushed me, and I pushed back." The union official immediately filed a formal complaint with the American Federation of Musicians. The timing couldn't have been worse. The Kinks had just parted ways with their manager Larry Page, leaving them with no one to defend them or smooth things over. After reviewing the Cardiff violence, the skipped San Francisco show, and the TV studio confrontation, the AFM made an unprecedented decision. The Kinks were banned from performing in the United States for 4 years. As their bank accounts dwindled, something even more dramatic was about to happen to their frontman. While the Beatles were buying mansions and the Rolling Stones were racing sports cars, the Kinks faced financial ruin. Herman's Hermits scored 18 top 40 hits in America during the exact years the Kinks were banned. Each hit represented a fortune they couldn't touch. A successful British band touring America in the mid-60s earned $5,000 to $10,000 per night, equivalent to 6 months' wages for the average worker. Over a typical 30-day tour, bands collected $150,000 to $300,000. The Kinks missed at least 8 major tours over 4 years. Up to $2.4 million in touring revenue alone gone. Without American tours, their album sales collapsed. Their debut reached number 29 on US charts before the ban. After, Kinda Kinks barely made number 60, with each subsequent album performing worse. People forget how important touring was back then, Ray Davies later reflected. If you couldn't play live in America, you essentially didn't exist there. The damage extended far beyond concerts and albums into lost merchandise, TV appearances, and magazine coverage. In 1965, John Lennon bought his Kenwood mansion for $56,000. Mick Jagger acquired his historic Stargroves estate for nearly $100,000. Meanwhile, the Kinks lived in modest houses and drove used cars. Ray Davies couldn't afford to fix his broken-down vehicle as legal bills mounted. He sometimes couldn't even buy his young daughter birthday presents. To make matters worse, their ex-manager Larry Page filed expensive lawsuits against the band when they could least afford legal fees. Financial analysts have estimated the ban cost the Kinks $5 to $10 million, enough to buy over 500 luxury homes at the time. By mid-1965, the Kinks had 3 top 10 American hits, positioning them alongside the Beatles and Stones. That momentum vanished overnight. As financial pressure crushed the Kinks, Ray Davies broke down. By late 1965, the non-stop cycle of touring, writing, and recording had hollowed him out. "I was like a zombie," he later admitted. The breaking point came when Davies ran 6 miles from his suburban home to downtown London, wearing only his pajamas. He burst into his publicist's office, disheveled and wild-eyed, before physically confronting the man. This wasn't eccentric rock star behavior. It was a complete nervous breakdown. The pressures were overwhelming. The American band had cut off their most lucrative market. Record companies still demanded hit singles. Unlike many peers, Ray had a young wife and baby at home. After the pajama incident, doctors ordered Davies to retreat from public life. It seemed like the final blow to a band already on the ropes. But in the quiet darkness of recovery, something remarkable happened. Without American tours to worry about, or record executives hovering over him, Davies found a new creative voice. "I decided to break away from the American scene and write more introspective and intelligent songs," he explained. The breakdown became the unlikely seed of artistic rebirth. Free from the pressure to create American-friendly hits, Davies turned to distinctly British themes: afternoon tea, steam-powered trains, and village greens. He created character studies of everyday English people that would never have made it onto American radio. Released in 1966, Face to Face marked the first step in this new direction. As Ray retreated into thoughtful introspection, Dave dove headfirst into London's wild nightlife. These opposing forces created perfect creative tension. The Kinks' sound transformed dramatically between 1966 and 1968. Gone were the hard-driving riffs that made them famous. In their place came music hall influences, Baroque melodies, and lyrics painting vivid pictures of English life. The American band gave us freedom, Ray later reflected. We were allowed to be more poetic because there were no expectations from record companies demanding a certain type of record. They pushed further with Something Else in 1967, featuring Waterloo Sunset, now considered one of rock's greatest songs. Then in 1968, at the height of psychedelia, they released The Kinks Are the Village Green Preservation Society, a concept album celebrating disappearing English traditions that had nothing to do with current trends. While everyone else explored psychedelia, the Kinks crafted intimate stories about ordinary life that felt revolutionary with their simplicity. From personal crises came their most distinctive and enduring work. When the Kinks finally stepped back onto American soil in October 1969, they faced a brutal reality. The world had moved on without them. After 4 years of exile, Ray Davies ended the band by signing a confession for the American Federation of Musicians, one he later admitted he didn't even read. On October 17, 1969, the Kinks made their comeback at New York's legendary Fillmore East as the opening act for a band called Spirit. Just 4 years earlier, they had commanded sold-out venues as headliners. "It was like starting over completely," Ray later recalled, "like all our earlier success had been erased." The America of 1969 was unrecognizable. Woodstock had just happened, Hendrix had redefined electric guitar, psychedelic rock had given way to harder sounds and protest music. Ray Davies summed it up perfectly: "That ridiculous band took away the best years of our career." By 1969, the Woodstock generation had arrived, and the Kinks were almost forgotten. Their comeback tour became a struggle for survival. Promoters who once fought to book them now showed little interest. Shows were canceled due to poor ticket sales. When they played their new material, audiences looked confused. Songs about English villages and afternoon tea seemed bizarrely out of touch with an America in the midst of Vietnam protests. Village Green Preservation Society, now considered their masterpiece, had bombed commercially, failing to chart and initially selling only about 100,000 copies worldwide. Arthur barely registered at 105 on the Billboard. Salvation came in 1970 with Lola, their ambiguous tale of man's encounter with a transgender woman. The catchy, controversial song reached number 9 in America, putting the Kinks back on radio stations nationwide. "It was like we had to pay our dues all over again," Dave Davies explained. "Playing clubs that were way too small for us, staying in cheap motels, starting from nothing." By the late 1970s, their persistence paid off, with harder rocking albums like Low Budget connecting with arena audiences. The 1980s saw the Kinks touring American stadiums with hits like Come Dancing. The band America had once banished and conquered the market by remaining uniquely, stubbornly British throughout their evolution. What began as a devastating blow ultimately became the catalyst for the Kinks' most important work. Far from mere financial loss, the American band created something money couldn't buy: true artistic freedom. While shut out of the world's biggest market, they developed a dedicated cult following that recognized their evolving genius. Music historians now view the albums created during this period as critical milestones in rock history. For fans who discovered their music years later, these albums feel like time capsules, perfect snapshots of English life preserved against all odds. Would the Kinks have created their most critically acclaimed work without the American band? It's impossible to know. But their journey shows how sometimes our greatest setbacks lead to unexpected triumphs. By embracing their distinctly British identity rather than chasing American success, the Kinks created a musical legacy that continues to influence artists today. Their story is the ultimate reminder that sometimes the path less traveled leads to true greatness, even if it costs $50 million along the way.